Sam Adams was hit with some bad news this week. It's probably not news that they're not already aware of, but the Boston Beer Company has had a rough year in 2016. Through 3 quarters, their sales had dropped year over year of 7.5%. And for full year, they haven't released their last quarter or their full year data yet, but analysts expect that it will drop year over year about 6%. So that last quarter will be an improvement, but not enough to bring them back to even. So they're realizing a very large sales decline. It's their first sales decline in 13 years. And this is troublesome for a couple of reasons. There were a couple of factors this year that should have helped them. Analysts were saying that in their reports, Boston Beer Company had projected a sales or a price increase on their products of anywhere between 1 to 2%. So thinking prices are going up, sales should go up, but that's not happening. In addition, this last year we had 53 selling weeks as opposed to normal years where there were 52. Again, that extra week should have helped lift sales. And again, no, they're falling short year on year. And it's not just their Sam Adams brand, it's their Angry Orchard and it's their Coney Island brands that are all failing. The whole portfolio not performing very well. And not just sales. The stock price has fallen for 2 years in a row now. So they are in some dire straits. Now, if we want to analyze the situation, maybe root cause this and see what is happening with them, you might want to look at their beer. Is the beer the reason why their sales are falling short, or at least aren't growing? And I would tend towards no. I think their beer is good. I don't know that they need to change anything with their beer per se. I'm not one of those beer snobs that's too snobby that I don't like to drink any Sam Adams. I think their beer is good. What they release is pretty good. I've enjoyed it. There's also this idea that there are the macro beers are coming in, the Miller Coors and the Anheuser-Busch. They're buying up these other brands and taking up shelf space and tap space. As a matter of fact, Jim Koch, the founder and CEO of Sam Adams and Boston Beer Company, he was in Michigan this week. The Michigan Brewers Guild was having their annual get-together, their annual beer meetings this week in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And so in advance with that, he was talking to the press here locally, and he had some things to say about the market and the macro brews trying to push craft beer back. In a local report here in Michigan, and in the context of talking about taking on the big brewers, he said, quote, "Every day we get kicked off of tap lines. We get kicked off of shelves. We are kind of the first target, the first one they want to take out. If you're going to try to kill a category, you start with the leader." I've got to say I take umbrage with that a little bit. I disagree with Jim. I don't think that it may be true, right, that the big brewers are trying to muscle people out, but I don't think they're trying to kill a category. His perspective is that the big brewers are trying to kill craft beer, and from evidence we're seeing that is not true. They are buying up. If anything, they're trying to grow craft beer. Craft beer right now is the only segment of the beer industry that is growing. Everything else is falling. So the big brewers, the macro beers, they're buying up. They're using their M&A. They're acquiring the brands that they want. Judging by their M&A activity, we see that they're not trying to kill craft beer. They are, for sure, they're trying to gain market share. So where they can push out Sam Adams, they will try to do that. I think, though, my personal opinion on this is I don't think it's coming from the big brewers. I think there's a revolution or a change. There's a groundswell, that there's some shifting going on in the market right now, and at least speaking for what I've noticed and seen personally, I think it's going local. Beer is becoming a localized market, and when you want to go to your neighborhood brewery, you spend time there, you get to know the people there, within your own local community. People aren't looking out to buy, at least the craft beer drinkers that I'm familiar with and in the community, they're not going to buy, first of all, they're not going to buy Bud and Bud Light and Coors Light or any of that. And kind of on par as far as reputation is going to be your Sam Adams. They're still considered, to the eyes of many, big beer. They don't have local locations. They don't have tap rooms outside of their own location in Boston, where they do innovative, good things, and they have beers on tap that are experimental in their tap room. But it's seen, at least in my perspective, it's seen as being very elitist. It's East Coast, it's not local, it's not down to earth. They just seem very unapproachable in their marketing and in their beer. The beer, don't get me wrong, I've already said it tastes good, but it's not something that the community is looking for right now. They're looking for local, they're looking for homegrown, they're looking for community, and that kind of a beer does not jive with what these people are looking for. So I think that's part of what's going on, is they're just missing the boat entirely, where it's not the big boys down pushing him out. It's these local guys that are growing, and since the local stores are seeing that this is where people want, maybe that's what's hitting shelves, and that's what people are being drawn to, is the things that are local, not necessarily the things that are most well known. With that being said, what might be some things, not that they will listen to me, but what are some corrections, some suggestions that I could give them? First of all, and this isn't a suggestion proactively, this is something that they've already put out there. Last week there was a press release. I didn't include it in my beer news last week because I didn't deem it important enough. I had other news stories that seemed pretty good. But they did release that they were going to be they were going to release 2 new seasonal beers. The tradition is, at least with Sam Adams, is that every season gets its own new seasonal release. And they've said that this year they're shaking things up. In this winter-spring season, they're going to have 2 seasonal beers. So not a huge change, but at least it looks like they're trying to do some different things. They're changing how they're operating, shaking up their beer lineup a little bit. And I think that's a good place for them to start. I would also say that, as I mentioned, the beer community, they're missing the boat. They need to localize. They need to maybe do what Stone is doing, and Oscar Blues, and Lagunitas, and they're expanding out of their home state or their home region and going to reach communities all around the country. Sam Adams and Boston Beer seems very isolated, way in the Northeast in Boston. They don't have any reputation. They don't have any locations westward. They do have production plants, I believe in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, and in Cincinnati, Ohio. So they have production plants, but they don't do tours, they don't do tap rooms, they don't open to the community, as far as I know. So that might be a good place to start. Start with where they have locations. Put in tap rooms. I'm sure they already have community efforts there. They're large employers, so they must have a lot of employees that do goodwill, and they're known in their communities in those areas. Start there. Start where they have a footprint. Build a tap room. Start doing things like that. Then do things elsewhere. Do things in the South. North Carolina's been a hotbed of activity lately. Do things further out west. It might be harder to get in there, or maybe just focus on the Midwest. I don't know exactly where. That'll be up to them to decide. But they need to localize, in my opinion. They need to find a new community. Find somewhere that they can get some good PR, get some good activity going, some groundswell of support. After that, we may just see, if things start going badly for them, they might turn into the AB InBev. They might start having to acquire new brands. We might see them start acquiring some of the beers, the breweries that we know and love, the same way that we see AB InBev doing the same thing. They might just they are already the biggest craft beer brewer in the craft industry. It would make sense if they're falling short on projections and their sales keep tanking and their stock keeps falling. They're going to have to increase sales and increase profits somehow and turn things around, and that might be the next best option for them. It's not something that I think we would look at favorably as a craft beer community, but it might be their really only source of changing things, and it may come down to that for them.